Hi, my name is Lee Detloff, and I'm doing my project on the representation of women in the media. This topic is pretty common discussion, but I chose it because there is a level of seriousness and a different level to it that people may not be taking into account when they are debating. So I will break it down into the see, judge, and act format. First is see. So here I put some real basic information that is important to keep in mind when thinking about the representation of women in the media. According to the Census Bureau, 51% of the U.S. population is female. And then out of that 51%, 65% of females have reported that they either have a body dysmorphic disorder or have experienced it in their lifetime. And then also the rates of depression in young girls and women have doubled since the year 2000. We've all seen the articles and talked about it in our high school classes or our college classes, but it is plainly obvious that women have had a rough time in our society. It has almost gotten to the point where it's part of our culture. Women are viewed and view themselves as objects, and their purpose is to impress men. According to a survey done by Skin Store, women in the United States, on average, spend over $300,000 in their lifetime on face makeup alone. So, women spend more on their looks and their beauty than they do on their education. But I don't believe this is our fault. This has been something that's been ingrained not only into our minds, but into male minds as well. Yes, the media has had an influence on our society, but what we really should be saying is that media is creating and controlling our culture. Whenever we talk about what makes our cultures or all of our different cultures, we automatically think of our ancestors and holiday traditions and things that happened in the past. But when we ask someone about their culture, we really want to know, what's your culture like today? So today, the way we share our ideas and our news and our government and our values and our morals isn't through family story time or through churches like it used to be. It's through the media. That is the main way that we give out information about our culture. So our culture is formed through our media. And when I say media, I'm not only talking about television, I'm talking about everything with a screen that we watch. Today, people aren't watching TV, they're messing around on the internet or Snapchatting or YouTubing or BuzzFeed, Facebook, podcasts. I know I am on Facebook at all times. According to a study done by Nielsen, Americans spend 9.5 hours a day on media or consuming media content. And the New York Times that reported that, they actually reported that for the survey was done in 2015. But New York Times is saying that this year, in 2016, it is estimated that we are consuming 10.5 hours of media content. So to review, our cultural values and our norms are decided by the media because our population consumes 10 hours of media a day. Our population, which is over half women, and over half those women experience self-confidence issues, and we are constantly fighting to bring better representation of women in the media. So that brings us to the judge portion. The way we set our morals and our values is through what we know and what we see, and again, that is through the media. So instead of blaming the person that is watching all of these norms and values be created and how they are doing things wrong, we should be looking at actually who is putting those norms and values out. So there are 6 major corporations that control 90% of America's media: GE, News Corp, Disney, Viacom, Time Warner, and CBS. And then you'll see that within all of those different companies, you have the NBC, the Fox, ESPN, HBO, and all of the different cable news networks in there as well. I actually went to each corporation's website and looked at their leadership that they provided. They all had an average of around 22 members of executive leadership members. So in total with the 6 companies, it was 124 executive leaders. So that's 124 people representing 321.4 million people in the United States. When I went back through and looked at it again, I noticed that on an average, 3 to 4 of those executives were women. So you can see GE, 2 out of 24 of them were women. News Corp, 5 out of 19 were women. It was a total of 25 women out of 124 media executives. And 0 of those women were chief executives. So we are expecting roughly 100 men to control our media and what we view and to represent us accurately. And that should be scary in itself, and we should want to make a change in that. You see people gravitate towards things that are most like themselves. So if the majority of men are deciding what we see on our TVs and our phones and on the internet, that content will be geared towards men and men's ideas, morals, and values. And that may seem like a general assumption, but it is true. If you look at our news, you may see women anchors, but those women are most likely between the ages of 20 and 35. In fact, 70% of all women on media, so that is news, commercials, TVs, movies, are between the ages of 20 and 30 years old. So 70% are 20 and 30 years old. There's a theory behind that statistic that women are only viewed as purposeful when they are in their childbearing age. So the reason for them to even be on TV would be for the purpose of sex or childbearing. So as soon as they have aged out of that or past childbearing age, they disappear from media. And then if we look at news in general, on average, only 20% of news stories cover women and women's issues. And then the majority of that 20% of women's news stories involve women being the victim as well. So women are not equally represented in the news, and that's where we go to learn about our lives. So if we see that in our news it's dominated by men, we live our lives in that way as well. Another area of media that is exploding is social media. Social media is where I get a lot of my information, whether it's information on my family and friends, or news, or shopping, or trends. If I had to evaluate my media consumption, the majority of it would be probably on Facebook. So I wanted to see what their leadership looked like as well. I've read a lot of articles about how progressive companies like Google and YouTube are when they have things like nap breaks and ping pong tables in their offices. So I figured maybe it would be better representation of women. But to my surprise, men dominate social media as well. Facebook, Google, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube all have 70% of male employees deciding what content you are seeing. Even Pinterest has more male employees than women. See, the issue here is that media is being filtered and presented to us through the eyes of men. That's fine for 49% of our population, but the 51% of females that live in the United States deserve fair and equal representation as well. We need job equality in every field, but in the area of media, it's especially important. Luckily, gender equality has been a hot topic as of lately. While researching this information, I started to see more and more information on programs and policies companies can use to help bring gender equality to their companies. An organization called Women's Media Center, which I got a lot of my information from, it focuses specifically on women's roles in the media, not just actresses or news anchors or what you see in front of the camera, but also behind the camera as well. They came up with some programs and objectives and standards for companies to use to get gender equality, so I thought I would share a few of them with you. The first one that I thought was interesting was using affirmative action and equal opportunity committees. These committees these committees help monitor gender equality within the company. Similar to how affirmative action tries to bring racial equality, they can use the same guidelines for gender equality as well. Another one was companies starting a gender desk or gender desk officer, and I had to Google this one, and a lot of companies are actually using this. It's almost like a separate human resources department, but specifically for gender issues. They would also be monitoring any discrimination, possible discrimination, or imbalance in gender within the company. And both of these are to achieve women representation in all departments. So like I had mentioned earlier, they want to make sure there's women directors, and there's women screenplay writers, and there's women producers. Right now, only 17% of writers, producers, cinematographers, and directors are women. So we need to be able to get the women's eyes and the women's perspective out there as well. And we want to make, this may all seem very trivial and like a very specific issue, women's occupations in the media company, but I do believe that this is a huge starting point to seeing a huge change in how women are portrayed in the media. I don't think we realize just how much pull men have in what we are all viewing for 10 hours a day. Unfortunately, not all of us can become chief executives of major media outlets. So I did want to think of what we could do to help the media portrayal of women. So out of all of the advice, I found that everything was saying to communicate, to talk to people, to ask if something seems a little off in that last news article, to start a conversation. Don't just settle on, oh, that's just how things are. We need to feel confident in telling anyone, no matter the authority, whether it is our next door neighbor or the President of the United States, that we will not be an object and that they cannot judge us objectively like that. Even if the media portrays us this way, we are not the minority. Men dominate us in the media, but women dominate in the population. And we just have to remember that. So, thank you.